My name is Hector Garcia Estrada, and this is problem 3 of homework 1 of the probability and stochastics processes class of NYU Poly. So the problem goes as follows. We have a transmitter that can transmit a 0 or a 1 with a probability of 0.6 or 0.4. And then a receiver will receive either a 0 or a 1 with different probabilities. The channel is noisy, so it might happen that when transmitting a 0, we get a 1, or transmitting a 1, we get a 0. So first I'm going to define the events. A is going to be 0 is transmitted. With a probability of 0.6. Then B is going to be 1 is transmitted. With a probability of 0.4. Then the next event is going to be C, which is 0 is received. When 0 is transmitted. The probability C equal to 0.7. And then D is 1 is received. When 0 is transmitted. With P of D equal to 0.3. And the final two events are going to be E and F, where E is 0 is received, when 1 is transmitted, with P of E equal to 0.2, and F, 1 is received when 1 is transmitted. The probability of F equal to 0.8. So the first part to solve is the probability of receiving a 0. And we're going to call this receiving a 0 as the event G. So the probability of receiving a 0 is going to be equal to the probability of receiving a 0 when 0 is transmitted times the probability of 0 being transmitted plus the probability of receiving a 0 when 1 is transmitting times the probability of transmitting a 1. Now both the probability of receiving a 0 when 0 is transmitted is going to be equal to the probability of C, and the probability of receiving a 0 when 1 is transmitted is going to be equal to the probability of E. So substituting at the answer, this is going to be equal to P of C times P of A plus P of E times P of B. Substituting the values, we got 0.7 times 0.6 plus 0.2 times 0.4. On solving, we have that the probability of receiving a 0 is going to be equal to 0.5. Now, for the second part of the problem, is the probability of error. Which we are going to assign the letter I. So the probability of error is going to be equal to the probability of error when transmitting a 0 times the probability of transmitting a 0 plus the probability of error when transmitting a 1 times the probability of transmitting a 1. And as in the previous part of the problem, the probability of receiving a 1 when transmitting a 0 is going to be equal to the probability of D. And the probability of receiving a 0 when transmitting a 1 is going to be equal to the probability of E. We substitute in the equation, and substitute with the values. And solving, we get that the probability of error in the transmission system is going to be equal to 0.26.